Welcome. Lots of familiar faces out there, lots of new faces as well. How many people are pumped for this week? Wow, all right, good. Good liars, good liars. So super excited to have all of you here. My name is Sean Askay. I've been on the Google Earth Outreach team for about 8 years, up until earlier this year, doing lots of amazing work with our partner organizations. Rebecca had mentioned Save the Elephants, Amazon Conservation Team, a lot of groups that you're going to hear from while you're here this week. Recently, I took over as the engineering manager for Google Earth. We are reinvigorating Google Earth, and I'm super excited about it. Yeah, I can't tell you a ton right now, unfortunately. Maybe if you bribe me. But we would really love to hear about what you need and want out of Google Earth. A lot of my team, the engineers on my team, will be coming this week, attending, helping TA some sessions, coming to the Q&A. And so I'll be making sure to send them to you to kind of get your feedback on the current version of Google Earth as we think about how we can take it to the next level. So with that, I'm going to do a quick introduction to the various mapping data visualization tools that we'll be training you on later today. So I'm going to start with a brief introduction of Google My Maps. So how many people here have used or heard of Google My Maps? OK, let's call it half. I don't like slides, so I take the chance of doing everything live. So forgive me if it falls apart. And I also just like starting with how I find information. I use Bing, as you can see. So Google My Maps, right? You know, you launch this. Google My Maps is a really simple tool for drawing on a map. Really simple 2D maps. You can import spreadsheets. Import Excel spreadsheets from your hard drive and pull in stuff from your Google Drive if you use Google Spreadsheets. You can also upload Google Earth KML files. So I'm going to show you a couple examples. This is a running map of, I think, most of the places I've traveled to in the world. I'm working my way around. I got to get to Southeast Asia. And I'm missing a couple, so I'm going to add a place mark here. Just like that. I could upload pictures. I could type in a description. But it's pretty much that easy. I can draw points, lines, and polygons on the map. I can also pull in a spreadsheet that has a tabular data set like a spreadsheet and use the columns to style the polygons, the lines, the points that I pull in onto the map. So if I want to color these by how long ago I went on that trip, I could do that. And you'll be learning a little bit more about how to use these styling tricks in a session later in the day. Here's a slightly fancier map. How many people here are not from the United States? How many people have slow internet, slow connections to Google sometimes? Yes, this is why. So this is a map, a Google My Map, of last year's Geo4Good participants. We need to update it with all of your information. But you can see I've got little people icons around the world. These little computers are Google data centers. And all these lines in between are the fiber optic connections, either over land or under the sea, that connect the world to our data centers. So you can kind of guess that if you are out in some places where you've got a really long haul to get to the closest data center, that's part of the reason why Google Drive or Maps or something is a little bit slow, because that information's got to go a long way. So here's an example of data that I pulled in from a spreadsheet. I pulled in a KML with all these lines. And I can take this, I can embed this on my website, or I can just provide the link directly. Another really nice thing about Google My Maps is you can collaboratively edit. So you can share a map with a bunch of your coworkers. You can all be working on the map at the same time, adding, deleting, editing. All right, next product I want to talk about is Fusion Tables. So Fusion Tables, we're going to be taking a look at this page, which is a gallery of really interesting use cases for Fusion Tables. Fusion Tables is kind of the next level up in the sense that if you've got a ton of data, you know, Google My Maps is probably good for 5, maybe 10,000 features on the map, points, lines, or polygons. If you've got way more data than that, if you're talking multiple tens of thousands, 100,000 data points, Fusion Tables is a bit more robust for those kind of use cases. You can create them directly from Google Drive. Let me show you a couple examples. This is a map of all of the newspapers around the world, and they are color-coded by language. So here in Western Sahara, you can see, this is webthumbnail.org. Very fun website, I'm sure. So anyway, so this is basically styling on tabular data, saying, let's pick for English language a certain color, right? For each of the languages. And then you can zoom in and you can kind of deep dive in and see where all these newspapers are based. Here's another example of a fusion table. This one was created before one of the recent hurricanes back in 2011 in New York. Was it Irene? I forget. Does anyone know? Sandy? It might be Sandy. I don't remember offhand. But these are the evacuation zones because there was a lot of concern about the sea level coming in with the storm swell and inundating, flooding a lot of portions of the New York area. So this is a map of high-risk zones, color-coded, based on how much they expected to get flooding. You can create a fusion table just by going to Google Drive and adding a Google Fusion table. When you do, it looks something like this. This is a data table of butterfly species, specimens that were collected in Costa Rica. As you can see, it's tabular data. All of these columns you have access to when you're making your pop-up balloons. And in addition to viewing them in a row format, you can add a tabular view. And you can take a look at, for example, bring in the picture of this caterpillar for a specific species, a specific specimen that was collected. So that's a great tool as well. The next one I'm going to talk about is the Google Maps API. How many people here do some programming? Wow, awesome, awesome. So we'll expect to see a lot of you in these sessions a little bit later today. How many of you use Google Maps API? I'm curious. Okay. So I think we're going to have some new faces in those classes as well. Google Maps API allows you to pull in our map and do lots of amazing stuff with it, right? If you want to make a website with full control, hit your database, put points on a map, you can do that with the Google Maps API. Here's a super simple example. This is something that's in the example section of the Google Maps API site, is make a website that has a search box, and when you type in an address, it flies you there. So this is a little embedded Google map. I could type in San Francisco, California, and hit geocode, and it's going to take us to San Francisco and put a little marker on the map. Here you can see this is the code, the JavaScript, that is required to create that site. It's really not that much, as you can see. It's not that much programming. So there'll be two sections later today. One is kind of a beginner introduction to using the Google Maps API, and one will be a bit more aimed at those of you who have already been using Maps API before. Another example of what you could do with Maps API, this is a marine traffic tracker website. I can zoom in and let's say click on something, and we're here in the Seychelles. And here are a bunch of boats, and we're pulling in all this data in real time from their database and visualizing it on the map on their website. So this is kind of a high-end example of what you could do with the Google Maps API. The final product I'm going to talk about is mine, which is Google Earth. Hopefully, how many of you have used Google Earth? Yes. OK, excellent. I love Earth. I've been using it for over a decade, and I'm really excited to be working on it starting this year. Let me show you some examples of what you can do with Google Earth. This is an oldie but goodie. This is Appalachian Voices map of Appalachian mountaintop removal coal mining. It's a strip mining practice that happens back in the Appalachian Mountains on the eastern side of the US. And we're going to fly into, they basically created a map of all these different mining sites to give people a sense of the scale and magnitude of what's happening. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load a before and after image. So this is what the area used to look like before they started the mining activity. And using Google Earth, I can fade away that overlay and kind of show you what it looks like today. They've created a story here, and one of the things that Google Earth is great at, and I'll be training on this later this week, is telling a narrative, telling a story. And so here is, for example, stage one of this type of mining practice. You got to cut all the forest down, right? Cut all the trees. And with this, they've kind of created the step-through experience where you can go step by step. The second stage is called blasting. And you can see evidence of blasting and blasting holes that are happening. We'll go off to the next one, which is digging. They bring in these enormous machines. I'll load this one really quick. It's oops, how about I don't? It's a 3D model of this enormous machine that makes this little car next to it look tiny, and it's used to scrape through all this rubble as they're looking for the coal. So you can step through step by step. I think there are about 6 or 7 different steps in the mining practice. Another thing that they did was they wanted to give people a sense of scale. How big is this, right? I mean, you're zooming in Google Earth. You don't have a good sense of scale. So what they've created was another KML file, Google Earth file, that takes that same polygon, that yellow border of the mine, and superimposes it on cities that you may be familiar with. So I'm going to zoom in here to San Francisco. And you can see that's how big that mining site is. They've completely cleared, blasted, and coal mined that entire region. And so this is a way to give that audience some way to better relate, right? And they've done this for a lot of major cities around the US, so everyone has something they can identify with. Another thing you can do with Google Earth is data visualization like this. This was done by Christian Adams here on the Earth Outreach team. And this is a map of geothermal energy potential across the US, taking a heat map and showing at different depths underneath the surface of the Earth how much energy could be extracted through geothermal energy techniques. One of the cool things that he did was to create this in 3D as well by state. So instead of going flat, I'm going to go in 3D. And now we're graphing some data. We're taking the polygon of a state and we're raising it above the ground in proportion to the amount of energy available there. And he's pulled in some dynamic charts and graphs to show at different depths, for example, in this case, New Mexico, how much energy potential is there. So there are a lot of different tools that you can use to do data visualization. We'll be talking about these 4 today: Google My Maps, Fusion Tables, the Maps API, and Google Earth as well.